Good evening, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melisa, Idris.
And I'm Sharaad, Kuttan.
Joining us on the show today, we have Dr. Hwok Aun, who's a Senior Fellow at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Yusof Ishak Institute in Singapore. And he's joining us to talk a little bit about the shared prosperity vision. So, Sharaad, you had a question about this, broad question.
Right, you started, recently one of your commentaries asked if there's a need for clarity and coherence with the shared prosperity vision. And I'm reflecting on some of the comments that have been made over time. In fact, just last week, Kamal Saleh at the ISIS event, ISIS Praxis event, said, that we've caught in a kind of Groundhog Day when it comes to talking about economic policies, and Groundhog Day since the early 70s. Now, do you think the shared prosperity vision 2030 really extends the conversation? Is it taking the conversation somewhere else, or are we stuck in the default settings that we had for so many decades?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, thank you for having me here. And there's no, the key challenges, I think still remain. So, there has to be some kind of elements of continuity there. We talk about growing the economy, about addressing inequality, and unity and all that. That's a very interesting point that Kamal Saleh had brought up, because yes, those things have persisted since then, but I would like to have an added twist to that, which is that the new economic policy, I think, articulated some differences between poverty alleviation and social restructuring, it was called, in a way that was very clear. And I think over time we have lost track of that clarity. And what I have argued, and I think one of the my main observations about the shared prosperity vision is that it's lacks that distinction between policies that are targeted and principal objective is poverty alleviation in providing basic needs, articulating where those specific interventions are and the basis for that. And making a distinction between policies that are striving, to promote certain groups' participation and capability and upward mobility.
Right. So the Malay agenda, the Bumiputra agenda.
In a way, we are. There's a lot of recycling, but I think actually if we were to revisit that and make that distinction clearer, I think we could really. That could really lay foundations for moving forward. Of course, with different kinds of interventions, modernized, modified, but still maintaining a very clear two prongs.
Right. The two prongs are both social in nature and political. But what about the economic story? And I think some people are concerned that the growth story is not there. So yeah, you have the continuity of providing for everybody and alleviating poverty. You have the Bumiputra / Malay agenda in the restructuring elements. But what about growth? What about Malaysia recognizing its place in the International Division of Labour? Where do we go? China, the region, and what is our strength in terms of economic growth potential? Do you think that that's there, or have we forgotten that? Because that's something that we leave largely to the private sector to take care of.
Yeah. I think we are responding to the SPV summary and the way that it was launched, and the publicly available document downloadable online is a summary, in which there is a lot of emphasis on inequality and the Bumiputra policies and inter-ethnic inequality. I don't think that necessarily will reflect the final product, maybe not even the full document. Next year, this is part of the policy dialogue, I hope, that has been kick-started. And I'm sure, yes, there's already been the kind of feedback and highlighting the lack of attention to that. It's certainly embedded in there. But I think that is something as well that could be drawn out, because I think there's a bit of that overlap. We look at the three overarching objectives: development for all, addressing wealth and income disparities, and then a united, prosperous, and dignified nation. This development for all, they're all really quite enmeshed, and I think they could also make a clearer distinction. What are the things, which are the, and re-articulate that something that is really much more growth. And within that too, about sustainability, right? Sustainable growth, inclusive growth. I think, yeah, those, you know, there's the importance and the urgency of addressing those will still
Well,
be there.
I definitely, I'm with you on that point about more clarity on which policies are for, you know, poverty alleviation and others that will perhaps promote certain Bumiputra development. But on that, now I want to circle back to something that Sharaad said. You know, we've had some time to digest this now. It was launched 5th of October. And much of that reaction that's come out from SPV2030 has been, well, again, you know, the focus on Bumiputra development, does it really need to be there? Because still viewing things from this kind of race-based lens has no place in Malaysia Baru, a lot of people have argued. What do you think about that?
Depends on what is your starting point. If your starting point and your end point is certain ideals and first principles, well, yes, but I think that is really quite, you know, it's not really confronting the realities squarely. There may be some escapist tendencies there as well. I think my starting point, and I think policy starting point, has to be with, you know, the situation as it is. What is in place and what actually are embedded.
Okay.
And in that, and if we apply a systematic approach to identify where the policies are, you know, very extensive, and they are very, they have extensive outreach. They're very, you know, they have been funded and continually funded. Outreach meaning that there's a lot of people who receive benefits and opportunities, right? Then we can draw up a very long list of those policies. Now, I think we yes, predominantly they do benefit Bumiputra, but I think we should also step back to see them as part of policies that are striving again to increase a group's participation capability where their participation and, you know, representation is missing, which tends to be which is not only about Bumiputra, but the same principles do apply to the policies that are trying to, you know, increase Orang Asli participation and gender. So, right, these are other categories that the same set of kind of policies apply, that are predominantly not based on income or
wealth,
you know, poor status and so on, but it's about a social, right, and a political mission to have more broader, you know, representation in particular areas.
Do you think that the SPV has gotten that right? I mean, if this is going to be the basis of policy making for the next decade, you know, the basis of all these master plans that will come out, do you think that they've got the diagnosis right when it comes to that?
Well, it will only be for the next decade if Pakatan Harapan has power after the next general election. I mean, this is very political.
Yeah,
and in fact,
absolutely
we don't know if there's a change in leadership between
whether this will be the
Dr.
basis.
Mahathir and Anwar Ibrahim. We might actually see a very different thing. This seems to be a very Mahathir document.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think, well, let's sort of, you know, try to read into or focus on, I think, some of the positive elements, both what's there and as well as the reactions. And I think it is tapping into a very, you know, a national yearning for policies that are yes, helping the poor, and that are providing for, right, Malaysians, you know, an assurance or giving assurance to Malaysians that they are cared for, that the system is looking out for them. And this is an opportunity to reset, right? With the new government, you want to bring in something fresh and new. It's not entirely like having to, you know, overhaul things, but just to clarify our thinking as well as the expectations. So to set out, you know, be clear, what are the policies and the programs, you know, what's delivered that is based on equality of all, providing basic needs such as basic education, such as, you know, incomes in like minimum wage, health services, on the principle that everybody is entitled to it. Right, on the principle of
basic
equality.
Human rights. Yeah,
there is a difference, and I think I can illustrate
because
there's primary education, secondary, and tertiary. So, and I was very intentional, and I think the policy needs to be intentional to make the distinction. primary education and secondary education is something that very clearly can fall under this umbrella of basic needs provision. And therefore, if people do not attain it, right, then the government should step in, because these are, firstly, it's compulsory. So if you're going to make it compulsory, then the government also must provide it. But another important element of it is that there's no entry requirements. You don't need to get certain grades to get into primary or secondary, right? So that's how it all can neatly fit together. Everyone gets it. There's no entry requirements. There's no barriers, and the government should provide. But tertiary is different. And so primary, secondary is quite clear. It's basic, and this is an opportunity to say that these are the things that the government will undertake to provide to everyone, right? But tertiary is specialized.
Yes.
Not everybody goes. Not everybody wants to. So we shouldn't even make it like universal and force everyone to go to university, to give them choices. So we cannot, right, approach that on the basis of just everybody must get in and on equality. I think one way we can approach that is to think of articulating certain principles that we want to strive for.
Okay.
And sort of the overarching theme of fairness. So the government commits to fairness. You have a right to be treated fairly. You don't have, everyone doesn't have a right to enter university, because you must still, attain certain grades. You can give preferences to poor and so on, right? But then it's quite a different approach. I think that should set expectations, and policies can be aligned accordingly. So we can strive for, yes, merit-based. We do, have to look at that, because grades are required as well, right? We can provide some preference to those who are disadvantaged,
right,
because they were not able to attain, as much of the same level of grades on average. And then we could have also some provision to have, diversity. But we have articulated what are the objectives.
So to make
and
it
it's
very
about
clear, right?
Yeah, but we strive for, a fair system, right?
All right.
And
Okay.
that's not something that's happening.
I don't see that, yes.
Okay.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation right here on Consider This. Make sure you stay tuned.